Hello, everyone.
I think that messengers are overlooked in New York City. Now is the time that people are able to see the importance of the messengers that are actually working during this pandemic. I haven't actually thought about myself as an essential worker. It kind of came about that my job happened to become essential work for what's happening right now. The better that I can do my job, the better it will be for other people. Right now, my days are pandemonium. Riding around the city can be dangerous, but as far as my own safety, it's not something I've actually considered. I more so am worried about other people getting sick, so I'll try and protect them as opposed to protect myself. I feel right now everybody is connected through this. We're able to see now that we have a lot of power as people as opposed to everybody working individually. If we're trying to flatten the curve, that has to happen from everybody having a single goal and working on it together. That's how the world will probably change. That's something to look forward to after this. New York City is strong. New York City is resilient. The overall theme of New York City is that we fight. My name is Donovan Gray, and I'm a bike messenger in New York City.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would say that almost good evening. So welcome today to our webinar session. And first of all, I would like to tell you that we are University of Dayton Publishing, and this is a result of an alliance between SM, a leading content publisher, and the University of Dayton, which is a top-tier Catholic research university. And in our dual roles as publishers and educational consultants, we deliver tailor-made solutions to help schools evaluate new materials, improve their curriculum design, and integrate the latest developments and technologies into teaching and learning. So we as University of Dayton and SM are really happy to be here today and help you with everything that we can. And that being said, today we're having our workshop, Can We Still Interact in Our Classrooms in COVID-19 Times? Monitoring and Participation in Distance Learning. And we have our speakers, Paula Ross and Francisca Gallegos. Francisca Gallegos is a master's in applied linguistics from Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile. She is an English professor and bachelor in English literature and linguistics from Universidad Católica as well. Currently, she's a practicum coordinator and a professor in the English pedagogy from primary and secondary school program at Universidad Católica. And she's also worked in the designing and monitoring assessment tools in the AEP program and Inicia project at Mineduc. We also have Paula Ross. She is also a master's in applied linguistics from Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile. She's holding a diploma in advanced linguistics from Universidad de Valladolid. And she's currently a senior associate director academic programs at English UC. And she is specialized in curricular design and evaluation instruments as well. So before we start, I would like to remind you of a few rules we have in our webinars. We have our Mentimeter links in which we have and hold questions, and you can answer and interact with our speakers. That link is on the top right of your browser in the website you're currently watching this webinar. And also next to the Mentimeter link, you're going to have an evaluation for the session that you can click on it, and then you can send it to us so that the speakers and us know in which ways we can improve. One other thing is that questions, we will be receiving them by the end of the session, but you can write them down on the live chat that you're writing now your greetings, and we will gather all the questions and we'll answer them at the end of the session. I'm sure that the speakers will be more than eager to answer all of your questions, as challenging as they can be. And also, one last thing before we start, we're going to have attendance certificates, and you can request them to info@udayton.cl. So you write an email to us, and then we can send you an attendance certificate, right? So after all this introduction, I will let you be with Francisca and Pablo, right?
Thank you very much, David. I bet you didn't know that we had sponsors, right?
We had the sponsors. Yeah, we're going to talk about it later.
We will. But
We
yes.
will.
See, luckily we did. You didn't know. But today we will start talking about how we can interact in our classrooms in COVID times, right? In COVID-19 times. We hope we can discuss how we can monitor and promote participation in our classroom, even when we are not interacting in face-to-face classroom, right? Distance learning poses a big challenges in our classrooms. Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, you can?
Oh, yes, go
on. You might know that our objective for today's session is to analyze some strategies that can help us monitor the teaching learning process, as well as specific tools that could allow us generate participation moments in this context, right? And now we want to introduce our workshop with this moment that might or not make you feel related to. Okay, so let's see. Just take a look at this, okay?
Light, camera, action. Okay, let's see how this class is going to do today. I'm connected. Some are starting to get connected. That's good. ADD. Who is ADD? Hello, CRS? Who are you? CRS? Oh, they don't want to say. Let me put on my glasses. Maybe I'll recognize the names better with them. Capital letters are so small. Okay, more and more are getting connected. That's good. Hello, Maria. Atrás, her name here. Maria, hello.
Hello, Miss.
Hello, Galaxy A30s. I'm the only one who laughs. Okay. Catalina, hello. Felipe, hello. Hello, everybody. Well, it looks everybody's here. So let's get started. Okay. Remember what we did last class, guys? Maria? You want to say, Maria? Maria, it seems your microphone is disconnected, Maria.
No, Miss, estoy aquí.
Okay. Nobody wants to say anything. Maybe it's too early in the morning. Well, any question about last class? Any? Guys? No? Okay, now let's move. Today's class is about invisible heroes in this pandemic. Do you know any person you can consider an invisible hero here in Chile? Guys? Anybody wants to answer that question? No? Nobody, of course. Okay. ¿Alguien por el chat?
No.
Okay. So today we want to talk about different workers whose work is very important for our society, but nobody thinks of them very much. Unsung heroes, we can call them. Can you think of one kind of invisible hero? Guys, can you? Who want to give me one job? Come on, guys. One job.
Mamá,
One job only.
¿Me puede pasar el cuaderno, mamá, por favor?
María? Maria, I see you want to say something. Go say it in English.
Mami,
Who is your invisible hero? In English. Mums? Okay, very well, Maria. Mums, yes, mums. What about the rest? Guys, anybody? Nobody? SOS ASAP. Cut. Well, so we didn't want to picture a teacher feeling odd with technology, which is a reality as well. But actually, having teachers who have worked so hard to control, to handle technologies or the new scenario, and still having the problem of not getting students who want to participate, how difficult it is to get students engaged in this new context. We wanted to bring you Julia Roberts and Sandra Bullock, but their schedule was full. So it was just us trying to picture, to portray a feeling of frustration that we may be experiencing in this new context. New, it's been some months already, but still new in comparison to everything we did before, right? So before we start, the idea is that we start thinking about our difficulties and the challenges that we may be experiencing and how difficult certain aspects of class participation are. So, Fran?
Exactly. So before we start, as David said at the beginning, you have a link I think at the top right side of your screen or something like that, which is a link to the Menti, to a Menti exercise. What we want you to do is to think about the most challenging activities that you have in your classrooms. And we want you to rank the following, think about the ones you believe to be the most challenging, okay? Having your students ask spontaneous questions, having your students answer your questions, having your students work in pairs, or having your students work in groups. Which you think are the most challenging nowadays in this context? Think about that. Go to your Menti and rank them. First, second, third, fourth. What do you think?
As we can see, they all have to do with participation.
Exactly. Okay. So we have a result there. Having students answer your questions. We have then working groups, how they're moving, answer your questions, ask spontaneous questions is in the third place. Working pairs, it's way below. Answer your questions, working groups. Way leading is answer your questions and working groups. Okay. Good.
Yeah, there is some movement, still some movement.
Yes. Working groups is now leading.
First place.
Choice,
yep.
Yes, took over. See how the choices are changing. Okay. Working groups, answer your question, took over again. Okay. It seems that having your students work in pairs, it's not such a difficult task nowadays.
And still they are all in a way similar, Fran. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they are definitely challenges for everybody.
Yes. Look at the first runner-up. How is moving? Okay. Okay, so we can see that all of them, in a way, are challenges nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay, but definitely the most stable one is to have your students answer your questions, right? But these are definitely related to pose a question, ask a question, and having no one to answer, right? And ask the sketch that Paula so well represented is like you ask a
Thank
question
you, Julia.
and you have no one there to answer, not even a face like to give us feedback about how we are doing in our classroom, right? In when we were in a classroom face to face interactions, we knew more or less what type of decision we could make, right? Now we don't have a clue, and that poses us in a difficult situation, right? So what can we do? Let's figure out.
And these difficult situations have to do with the nature of the English class. English class is not a content class that we lecture on, right? We want people participating because that's the nature of the subject. A participative nature of the English class is there as one of the elements that make this a challenge. And so what do we want to do? We want to produce interaction, how important the role of interaction is. But then it has to be mediated by certain activities. So the idea is that we consider that the premise here is that the English class is a class that we want to have students interacting among them, right? We want to have that picture, students doing something. So interaction is essential. Their interaction and ours when we make questions, but their own interaction as well, because of the nature of our subject. And that is why we need to think of this from the very beginning in the design, as we will see, to tackle this challenge.
Exactly. But then who are the ones interacting? When we were in classes in our classroom, we had different types of participants, right? We have these very active participants. We have the ones that were very reluctant to participate, and we have the ones that only participated when they were asked to. Now, when in this remote context, this has been actually even more evident, and the very active participant have took over the screen, right? Because the COVID pandemic has when it took over the planet, the problem is even bigger, right? And then the problem is more evident. So what shall we do? What we are proposing is that we design a class sequence that explicitly makes students participate through activities that require collaboration, and at the same time, it uses the class structures, the class target structures. What we are saying is that we produce moments in our classes to make students react to specific prompts, given specific inputs associated to the class structures, right? Because what we tend to do is to say, okay, so we design the structure and we say, do you agree? And we expect a specific reaction, right? Any questions? And then there's silence. What we are saying is that we plan ahead a specific activity to think some moments ahead that might be given by a certain application or a certain activity, which Paula is going to deepen in that aspect, to create this kind of moment. And it has a certain shape. And now Paula is going to explain a bit more of what is this about.
Yep. We can see that there is a zigzag there. So we wanted to call it the zigzag model for the EFL classroom, where you have cycles, you have moments. We are not forgetting about the methodological steps for the development of linguistic skills, the pre-listening, pre-reading, or the pre-teach stages, or the presentation. We are not forgetting about that. We are talking about cycles of movements where for students, and you start to move move them from one place to the other. It's like we take them from here to somewhere else and then make them come back to you and then make them work again. And that's why we figure it out as a zigzag with cycles that are composed of 3 steps, and they are called ready, set, go. So we can have many cycles of ready, set, go, where in ready we give an input necessary for them to work later. And then in the set stage, we give a clear instruction. So the input plus a clear instruction makes everything prepared to go and work. And that is the last the stage of the subcycle called collaborative work, or the go stage. So the idea is to make them, to make students move from one place to the other. That's why we say it's a dynamic step-by-step procedure. And of course has at its core to intend participation. So we believe that in this context, participation is not going to occur just because it will, okay? We have to make it happen. So we have to be more directive in terms of direct the students in these cycles and in these stages so that it works. And this implies having an English culture or English class culture shift. Because if our students are used to us being there, waiting for them to answer, the idea is that we break that culture that we sometimes have been building in because of the context, right? And we make them feel that in our class, in the English class, and because of its nature, the procedure is a bit different, and they are going to be expected to participate. We want them to participate, and we will intend their participation by designing in the activity a movement that comes from the teacher, the input, and all the pre-stages necessary for them to understand the input, to moments where they have to work on their own, in pairs, or in groups, and then again making them come back to the plenary mode with everybody and the teacher, where they are going to share what they have been doing individually in work, in pair work, or in groups, right? So it explicitly incorporates in its design plenary stages and independent and students' work stages of class time in these 3 moments of the subcycles, ready, set, go, which we can repeat as many times as we need. Fran. So we want to illustrate what we mean by subcycles, what we mean by repeating subcycles, getting the shape of a zigzag, and within the whole methodological procedure, which is what we know as teachers for the development of linguistic skills. So this is an activity to develop listening and speaking. At the beginning, it was our sponsor, but it wasn't. We watched a video, a Coca-Cola video. They have plenty of videos from different parts of the world illustrating what the pandemic is, and portraying many what they call unsung heroes. Okay, so sometimes invisible workers that are very important for the society. So if I have that as a material for my class, and since I know the steps, I will prepare my students to understand the vocabulary there. So I'll do a very good pre-listening stage. And the idea is that when I have the design here, I start thinking of moments when I'm going to be showing the input, I'm going to be as a teacher giving instructions, and then I'm going to have them to work individually or in pairs or in groups, and then making them come back to the plenary moment so that we can all share the answers. We intend participation. We can intend participation in different ways. In the case of this particular video, the one you saw, it was about Donovan Gray, messenger around New York City. It's interesting because the whole cultural aspect, right, we can have with our students there to discuss how the pandemic has reflected here or in other countries. And you know how difficult the situation in New York has been. So from that perspective, it's interesting also to consider that the resource is rich for that. But then it is you, the one who has, you have to produce a material. So you produce a material that I'm going to expand later in the set stage. You have your students in the ready stage. You show them the input, the activities described there. The teacher will present keywords, appear in the video, and gives instructions for students to work in pairs in an activity to work with keywords. So you start moving them from the input with clear instructions to a moment where they have to work. If you're working with Zoom, for example, which is one possibility, we will refer to others later, you can have breakout rooms and they can work in, as an example, Google Drive, for example. So the idea, and if you can open the link, Frank. The idea is that in advance, the teacher prepares a folder with the handout. I'm going to show you the handout and tell them, now the moment it is ready, input, set, instructions, and the instructions, you tell them, Margarita and Juan, you are pair 1. Violeta and Francisca, you are pair 2. And you give them one link only, a link that has all these folders. They see all the folders that you saw, but they just work in the folder they have been assigned. So the teacher needs to prepare a big folder full of, if you have 40 students, you can have 20 folders with the same handout. You just replicate that. And you tell students to go to one particular folder. And when they go there, they have the shared document to work. And they can use WhatsApp, because you will make them go work. Now you go work. I will be waiting for you here with your results. So now you go work, and they start the stage go, where they have to fill in the handout on the basis of a video that you showed and that they can watch again. And they go through the handout, okay, as you have designed. And then you have completed a cycle, and then you make them come back to you so that you can repeat the cycle again and have them all working together in a plenary mode so that they can start sharing the answers of what they have done. This is the movement we want to portray by saying this is a zigzag. You have your students with you, you give input, you give instructions, you put them to work, and you start moving them from one place to the other, from you to the collective individual work, and then to you again, intendedly, assigning names, assigning particular tasks to everybody, and then you share. They all share, and the teacher can have in the same folder just the handout for him that he or she will share with the screen, share a screen, right? Filling in depending on the answers. And then you can start calling out your students so that they can tell you what the answer is, and you go fill in the handout sharing a screen so that they all participate. So you intend participation again, because now you will say, okay, Valentina, so number 1. So we replicate what we have done in the real class by having specific work to be done, expected for them. The zigzag movement from one place to the other. You take your students, they are with you, you take them to work among them, then you make them come back to you, and that forms the zigzag in the stages ready, set, go. But there is also something very important to consider in the design of your activity. Sometimes in the design, we don't really consider that the type of exercise may lead to participation or may foster participation in a higher or lower degree. The idea is to be very critical. Since our context is critical, the invitation is being very critical too with the type of activity. A type of activity that appears in the book that you can adapt if necessary, or a type of activity that you create. And the idea is that the design of the activity allows them for participation. If they are going to be working in a Google Doc, we ask them to share comments and build the handout together by WhatsApp, a video call, for example. They will be working together. But then the exercise is also important. The activity itself, the task. If we choose true or false activities where they just have to say true or false, we can go to the next one. And then if we just decide that the activity is a multiple choice, there's very little they will participate, right? And they are likely to use Spanish. And here you can tell me, yeah, you're right, but what can I do? My class is very basic in terms of linguistic level. So this is the point where we can explore other options, even if the class has a basic level of English, to manipulate practice, to control their practice so that they still feel they are producing with language. So the idea here is to, and Fran, if you can click on the worksheet, please, to show you that if it is true, we can work a listening, a video with true and false, but we could also do columns. Can you go a little bit upwards, Fran? The exercise can look like this. In a context where you want to control practice, you can have half sentences, right? Which you can tell your students to join with because. So I'm thinking that this activity is suitable for a level whose linguistic performance is not really advanced at all. So they are not able to produce yet. And still, I don't want to do a true and false because I want them to build an answer together. And I want them to feel we are participating in the end. So what do? Prepare two columns that they can easily match. And also that have the two columns that have several combinations. If we go down, we can see, and that's what colors signal there. There are halves on column A that can be matched to column B and get different sentences. So wherever you have light blue on column A, you can have a possible ending on light blue on column B. And so if you see, even if you have 40 students, 20 pairs, and they start choosing, they will never get the same answers, one pair and the other. That's one advantage. The other advantage is that even if they have a very basic level that doesn't allow them to participate and create sentences about the video, they can still feel that they are producing extended discourse just by matching columns A and B. So from the more acquisition viewpoint, we can say also that making students get exposed to this type of exercises can help them to get exposed to the syntax of the language as well. And from that point of view, that gives them potential for further production. So it has lots of advantages, thinking of a basic class in terms of level of English, numerous class, so we are thinking of a large class, applying the zigzag modal with the different cycles, make them work together, and then come back to you, and by assigning turns, they can tell you what they have done, and they can feel they are producing different sentences. So you can have many combinations. And that's for a context of restricted linguistic behavior or potential linguistic behavior. But of course, if your context allows you, you can also work with partial production. So Fran, the one below, the item below, so we can have true and false, just that, or manipulate production as in the columns exercise, or move to partial production. So we are moving from no production at all to manipulated production or controlled practice. Then we are having a possibility like partial production if the English of your students allows for that, and have them just complete half of a sentence. Or also for levels where total production is possible, you can ask questions. So you can use the same material, the one you find on internet or on a book. You can adapt it depending on the reality of your students to allow for participation. So up to this point, these are the two things that the ideas that I've been developing. One has to do with the model, zigzag model, making students come and go to work and then come back, right? Doing that as many times as necessary. But the other is the design of the activity, how important it is to design an activity that allows for that movement. And if we come back to the PowerPoint, that's why it says there that it is true that true and false items, for example, are not preferable, but rather we want to do sentence completion, or we want to do questions, right? And in that way, as Fran was saying, avoid questions such as, do you understand? Or do you get it? Or does that make sense? Which are yes-no questions, which can be answered with yes and no. And what do we get from there? That our students don't say yes, they don't say no. So trying to change those questions by questions where they show understanding, where they show comprehension, they show control over the skill or the content. Fran.
Okay, yes, my mic was muted. So if we were seeing an example where we could work with speaking and listening skills. Now, if we see an example where we can reinforce reading and writing skills, we could have this structure. Remember that we are reinforcing the zigzag model, right? Remember that the idea is that we go back and forth thinking about the ready, set, go stages, right? If we think about the reading and writing stage, we could skills, we could suggest the following activity. Think about working together that they recall the principles of how to protect the environment. So we could say, think about reduce, reuse, recycle, and refuse, right? If you think about these words, we are using the imperative mood, right? So that we recall that mood. After that, we could invite them to think about the meaning of a homemade mask, okay? I forgot to mention that the objective of this activity is to use commands to follow a procedure. And that the function of the communicative function of this activity is to design a homemade mask, okay? So, so we already recall the 4 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and refuse. So we are making this umbrella, and then we ask them to take a minute to individually think about what a homemade mask is. If we ask them to think individually, we are giving the opportunity for all of them to think about the question, okay? So remember that we talked about these profiles of students, and we had the active participant, the reluctant participant, and this reactive participant, right? If we ask them to individually think, we are holding the horses of this active participant, right? And we are giving them time to all of them to think about the questions, okay? So we are suggesting to use this material. So we could, for example, okay, give them time to think about what a homemade mask is, right? So we give them time to think, a minute, and then ask them to turn on their cameras and signal with their fingers which of these pictures they think represent the definition of a homemade mask, okay? So point out with their fingers which of these represent that, 1, 2, or 3. So we are not asking them to verbally produce which of these they think it is, but just pointing out the definition, right? So we are promoting and democratizing participation, which is the opposite of what happens in face-to-face interaction, where this active participant tends to monopolize discussion, right? Okay, so that would be the first stage. Ready, right? The first stage of a zigzag model. So you show the slide and ask them to point out which the correct answer is. That's our proposal for the first stage, ready. After that, we could divide the groups in pairs. If we are using the Zoom application, the Zoom platform, we could use the breakout rooms. If we don't have that and we are using Google Classroom, we could create hangout rooms, okay? And that would imply that we need to create the rooms beforehand. But if we do have Zoom, we could create the breakout rooms and create the pairs. So in those pairs, we could ask them to sequence the steps to create a homemade mask according to what they believe. How they could do this? They should drag the pictures to the timeline in the corresponding sequence. How are we suggesting this? Using just Google Slide. The good thing about Google Slide is that on the first hand is an app that you don't have to pay for it. It's for free. And the second thing is that it allows you to paste pictures which you can drag. If my internet connection allows so. So you can have pictures and your students, can drag the pictures all together. Another positive aspect about Google Slide is that more than one person can intervene the same document. So they could all work together in the same document, right? So they could work in pairs, making decisions all together. So they could, for example, start making reaching an agreement on which picture goes first, right? So that would be the second step. Set, right? Now, an important thing is that whenever you ask them to go to one stage or the other, they are clear about which the instructions are. That's because you should allow them to self-regulate their time, because you won't have time or you won't be able to monitor their independent work because you're not omnipresent and you cannot be in the breakout rooms, right? You're just one person. So as that's not possible, it is very important that the instructions are clear for all of them. So what we are suggesting is that once you have already introduced the topic, definition of what a homemade mask is, you divide the groups into pairs, sequencing the steps. You warn them that they will have 7 minutes to sequence the steps, and then they will have time to correct that by giving them a reading text where they will be able to see which the correct steps are. So after that time is over, you will give them access to the actual texts so they can see what those the correct steps are. After the session, you will have access to all these materials in case you have not received the banner. I think that you already did, but just in case. So they individually will have a chance to take a look at this text, right? Where they will see the actual order, the correct sequence of the steps, right? Now, the important thing about this activity is that they will not only get the chance to see the correct sequence, but also to identify which the keywords are. So lay the cloth, fold in half, thread through, right? So after that, what we suggest is that once they have sequenced the steps, they go back to the main room, and through the chat, you ask them to share what the keywords are, right? What the key concepts are, fold, thread through, etc. And then once they have already, you have checked which the key concepts are, you form groups of 3, and then they leave the room again. So in groups of 3, they create their own homemade mask, right? And the application we are suggesting for them to do that in a more dynamic way is Jamboard, which is also an application where they can work all together collectively. And then they could use clipboards where they can get from online web pages, where they could use fabric or different pieces creatively, and of course using phrases or sentences where they have to use, of course, the keywords that they already identify. So again, the zigzag model is proposed in here, a sequence, a short sequence. The time that you should spend in the last sequence will depend on the time that you are assigned for your English class, right? So as you can see, they go back, they leave, go back, and leave. That's the idea behind the model that we are suggesting. And as we mentioned at the beginning, the purpose of it is that you plan ahead how you are promoting collaboration and participation all together, addressing the target structures in these different moments progressively. So the whole point of it is that we are intending in a more conscious way, because we already thought about the sequence of our class. We did already in our face-to-face classes, but now here it's a more conscious process because it's not happening spontaneously. Well, it didn't happen before. I mean, it did, but now it's even more important because the screen is forbidding us or preventing us for it to happen in a more natural way. So what does the zigzag model allows us? It allows us to democratize participation in a better way. It motivates interaction. It allows us to produce, it allows students to produce text in English, either orally or in a written way in different formats, as you saw. It fosters collaborative work, which is a very positive aspect. It also helps us design problem-solving activities, case analysis, collective writing, or other activities, which we think it's a positive aspect, favors the development of critical thinking, right? Now, what requires from teachers is that we need to carefully plan the instructions because we need to allow students semi-independent work. As I said a couple of minutes ago, as they need to leave the main session so they can work independently in the breakout rooms, instructions need to be very, very clear so they can work independently. Now, another important aspect is that we need to plan group formation before the session starts so that we can guarantee heterogeneity. Ideally speaking, these leaders or active participants are not all together in the same group so that the group conversations are not monopolized by these leaders, right? So diversity, the groups need to be diverse so that conversations happen, right? And another important thing is that the links are created beforehand so that in the classes, we do not waste a lot of time distributing the links, right? Another, you might wonder what happens in the context where there's low bandwidth. So what we are suggesting is that we could create Facebook groups and accompany that with WhatsApp audios. Now, what should be needed, what is needed here is that there are step-by-step instructions created that should include instructions or orientations for parents and tutors when necessary, okay? Now, what the CXED model can be replicated in an asynchronous mode, including more individual activities, right? What we can do, or what you could do in this type of context, is that students can arrange a time to meet in this context. And probably what we know is that what happens is that they can get together when parents get home at night, because these applications are free, right? Las compañías WOM, Movistar, and Tel have liberated the use of these applications. So that's why we are suggesting their use, right? So they can arrange a time, a day and time, so they get together. You can create groups, Facebook groups, so they can publish their results in there. You could create a document in Facebook that would look like this. And this document can emulate the function of a G-Doc, okay? So you can, a Google Doc. So you could post the task here. And so the groups could post their results in here. They could also upload videos in the Google group, and or they could upload videos, or they could do live streamings in groups. Another way to promote collaborative groups through Facebook groups is if you could create polls through Facebook, which would look like this. And those can emulate the function of Mentimeter, which is a very well-known application that also can emulate the function of Zoom poll. This is a way in which you could use Facebook and WhatsApp, right? In the case of low bandwidth contexts. Paula, I don't know if you can...
just go through them very quickly, Fran.
Yes.
There are some useful apps. We have a couple of slides with some examples. Canva to design illustrations, posters, leaflets, Google Docs slides, probably we have referred to that in this presentation. This one, Jamboard, maybe you know it. Google Docs, they will allow for interactive board to collaborate in real time, Coggle to create concept maps in groups, very interesting for collaborative work that they have to share with the rest later in the Go stage. And Discord that can be used from the web to allow to form groups to communicate, make video calls, play games, send voice messages, among others, in case the connectivity allows for that. And there are some others, right, Fran?
Some for others, Rate, which is a platform that can allow you to, in groups, take a look at videos from YouTube, Netflix, Vimeo, even documents for Google Drive, and share comments all at the same time in groups, so you can use it for pedagogical purposes. Padlet, which serves the purpose of an exhibition wall. You can upload documents, videos, leaflets, and you can like them. So it would be a good instrument. Mentimeter, which is probably the most well-known instrument where you can make online service of different nature. And Zoom poll, I don't know if you know it, but you can ask brief questions if you have that tool for your classrooms. The good thing about Zoom poll is that you don't have to ask your students to go through a specific website. The poll would immediately show in your student screen, so they can choose, make a choice in their screens. So it's a pretty good tool. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your attention. Those are our emails. I guess that you have a lot of questions.
Yes.
I don't know if David or Licinia who are going to let us know what type of questions we can answer.
I don't know if I had a problem of connection or you, Fran, but it was like
Aquí estoy. I'm here.
Hi, David.
Hey, sorry, I changed to English. Yes, we'll wait a few minutes, but I have a question that I saw on as you were presenting, which I think is pretty interesting. And someone asked that, can we include feedback in the go section, or do we complete the modal again?
Yeah.
Which I think is a very important question.
No, I can do that, Fran.
Sí, please.
The go section is the moment when everybody starts working and then share. Remember that you can repeat the subcycles as many times as you need. And it's not that there is something that is forbidden to be done. The interaction, remember that the key point here is to change the English class culture shift, this context, right? We want to make our students feel this is a place where participation is key. So if they say something and you want to give feedback, please do. That's the practice of interaction that we want, right? It's part of the new culture that we want to create, which is not new for English teachers. We know that that's the way. It's just that we are favoring here that in that way because we are intending that participation. So if it's group one's turn and they say something and you want to give feedback, please do. And that's the moment where you can share the whole plenary the answers from the working groups or the individual work. And of course, your feedback will be given because the answer you write or the result that you expect needs to be well written. So it's going to be the feedback for that will be natural.
Exactly. And I want to add something. If you're designing activities either in the ready or go stages and the feedback is automatic, it's okay. So it can be in either stage. And it doesn't mean that the cycle starts all over again.
Yeah, what I see from it is that it's multiple cycles happening in one same classroom. I mean, in one same lesson. So that's why feedback can be occurring in different stages, not necessarily just one, because it's a dynamic lesson rather than having one regular from start to finish lesson like horizontal.
Linear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And feedback is absolutely dynamic. So feedback happens all the time, and it could happen in the set stage. I mean, the ready stage. So thank you for your question, Yvonne. Very, very relevant.
Great. I don't think we have any other questions. I mean, we encourage everyone that's watching us at the moment that can ask questions. As I said at the beginning, our speakers are more than eager to answer questions, especially with this new way of teaching that they have showed us, which I think it's pretty innovative in terms of what we're living and currently.
David, somebody wrote that she prefers not to include the pandemic issue in the classroom, and that's fine. We wanted to remember that one of the, mainly in the school context and prioritized objectives, we know that understanding texts that are relevant to the context and, of course, that can also make students go beyond the limits of their own national identity is something good and expected. So it's a way to contrast and to talk about cultural aspects as well. And this was an example. But of course, we don't mean that all the materials and resources from now on have to be about the pandemic. So we respect that. And the idea is rather to portray the type of movements that you want from your students when going through the cycles so that there is more interaction.
Great. Yeah, I concur. So just for time's sakes, I think I want to thank Paula and Francisca for their amazing presentation. I want to remind everyone that's watching that this is going to be posted on our YouTube site, SM Chile, and on our Facebook site as well, so you can go back and check it over and over again. Also, we will be if you contact us through our email, which is info@udayton.cl, you can request attendance certificates for this presentation, and also we will be giving you the PDF for this presentation as well if you need it. All right, we are more than willing to share this information because in these times we all need to, help each other.
Yeah.
And also, one last thing also to remind you that there is an evaluation section at the top right side of your browser in this website where you can click on it and evaluate what we saw today. We will be more than happy to read your comments and improve our webinars, all right? So thank you very much for your presentation, Francisca and Paula, and I hope to see you again sometime, all right? Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Vamos que se puede, everybody.